Share the live, tell persons that we are back on, and you yourself can be part and parcel of the conversation as we are getting started here this afternoon at 6:10 on the evening of the 22nd day of January. That's a brand new year, 2023, the fourth Sunday that is. And so, yes, we are ready to make a start here as we're moving on. So just before I move on here in terms of introducing our panel here for tonight, let me say a special good evening to some of you folks already tuned in here. Claralyn Warrington, good evening. Celia King, Alistair Irish, good evening to you, my bro. Norma Ito, Stephanie Benjamin, Carol, Bruni, you are there as well. Good evening to all of you, the 26 and more of you who are already here. Thank you for letting us be part of your Sunday afternoon right here. Please, as we go, share the live as we are about to get into another very interesting conversation about elections in our region. We just had an election that concluded Wednesday in Antigua and Barbuda. And so this afternoon, we are going to spend some time on that and see if we had learned any lessons there from Antigua and Barbuda. We also have with us this afternoon a very formidable brother in the name of Mr. David Spencer. He always boasts of his roots. He has some roots in Dominica. And so he always, takes time off to come and talk to you, the Dominican people out there. But just before we go to Brother Spencer, in terms of his introductory remarks here, let me move across and say a special good evening to my brother here, Brother Alvin Thomas. We missed you for some weeks, Alvin, but you are there. Thank you. Good evening, bro.
Good evening, Buster. Good evening, my brother. Certainly it's a pleasure to be back. I was off for, I believe, 2 or 3 programs, and
yes,
I think it's my first for the new year. So let me, on behalf of Civic Vibes as well, extend a happy new year to everyone who is logged in with us this afternoon. I trust and pray that this year, 2023, will be a super and fantastic year for us. A year of action, a year of good things, a year of positivity. I believe the program started off on a pretty good note last week when you had our brother Simeon Joseph in the house, and he really did justice to the discussion. I listened intently to him then, made some very valuable contributions and comments. And let me just say welcome to our brother David Spencer. My brother, it's always a pleasure to share the panel with you. And I'm sure this afternoon we will be engaging in some very interesting and lively discussions. So pleasure.
All right. Thank you, Brother Thomas, for your introduction here. Thank you very much in a very, very special way. And I know the many folks already here locked in would like to say thank you as well to you, Brother Thomas, for always being ready, willing, and available where country demands you. Without further ado, let me move to our very special invited guest, that is Brother David Spencer. Good evening to you, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Lofty. Good evening, Mr. Thomas. Good evening to Dominica, and to our listeners everywhere, Lofty. It's really is a pleasure to be with you. And I'm good. This has been a good day. It's been a good week, so to speak, for the United Progressive Party, the party that I support. So we are pleased generally with the outcome of the elections here in Antigua and Barbuda. And we look forward to continuing our march towards improving our governance in Antigua and Barbuda.
All right, Brother Spencer, on behalf of the many folks logged in already, I want to say a special good evening to you again, and welcome to this platform here as we're about to take flight, as it were, in just a bit. But just before we start, sir, in the meat of the discussion as it is, let me say good evening to some more folks who have tuned in. Dorival, good evening to you. Simeon George. We also have Josephine Williams, good evening to you. Owen Prospect, good evening to you, sir. Judith Cochran. Janice Jacques, you're there as well. Brother Pat Corbett, very formidable patriotic brother. Good evening to you in the North. Mash, we know, I heard on MO today that the North is celebrating some opening of carnival. So Brother Pat, I hope that, everything is okay up in the North rather. Dorival, I mentioned you already. Mr. Jeffrey Brisbane, good evening to you, sir, and your family out there. Jules Lapinad, good evening to you. Dave Bertrand, that's another erudite brother, always tuned into Civic Vibes and always sharing the vibes as well. Celia King, you're saying that you're listening. Thank you for your ears in a very, very special way. And, you know, the list goes on and on and on and on. This afternoon, folks, just before I, you know, open up the platform, as it were, for brothers to dive a little deeper in the discussion this afternoon, let me just give you an idea of what we are speaking about. On the heels of Antigua and Barbuda's general election, where it was a real tough battle for the contending parties, I must say. So we'll be discussing that, but we want to extend the conversation in terms of not just what happened in Antigua and Barbuda Wednesday gone, but what we are seeing unfolding in our region. And so we'll be taking some things that happened in Antigua and Barbuda and sort of tying it across the region to make it, or make these scenario make much more sense, and what we can do as a people in these young and how do I want to say it, threatened democracies across our region. So that is our interest this afternoon. And yes, the numbers to call, they are 245-2396. Let me repeat those numbers, just in case you guys want to call into the program with your contribution. 245-2396. And another line, that is the DG line, it is 615-9470. Okay, folks, 615-9470. And also you can place your comments in the live feed if you have an issue in hearing yourself on live. All right. So, Brother Spencer, first and foremost, straight up the bat, in terms of, you know, you guys just concluded general election. I was on the ground for some time. I learned some stuff. I can tell you that. That may come up in the discussion. What is your general, you know, feel, sir, as to how, you know, the election unfolded?
Okay, so this is my summation, quick summation of the elections. That despite the tremendous amount of bribery and treating perpetuated by the Antigua Labour Party, and many of that being done in the public domain, in the eyes of the watching world, international media, local media. Clearly, there's been broadcasted, captured in audio. Despite that, Loftus, the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party came within a skin's teeth of losing the 2023 general elections. And it must surely have shaken and our rather, I would say, authoritarian prime minister with dictatorial tendencies. It must have shook him to the core, because interestingly, you said you were on the grounds here in Antigua. You must have seen how the entire country was, flooded in this scandalous way, was flooded with the paraphernalia, the campaign material, the super huge billboards of the candidates of the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, on each of which the Prime Minister inserted himself and seemed to have dominated even the campaigning at the election. Because in reality, Loftus, what we had in Antigua and Barbuda was 17 elections at the constituency level that we amalgamate into what we would call a general election. All right. So what happened in each of those constituencies, the Prime Minister superimposed his photo alongside the candidate of the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party. So in a sense, the Prime Minister was on each and every ticket. And so the rejection for the UPP to have moved from one seat in the legislature, in the House of Parliament, to now 6 seats and to have come, I would say, within 46 votes of taking the government, of winning a majority of the seats, was a tremendous turnaround in the fortunes of the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party.
You say
And of course,
you said 46 votes?
Within 46 votes. For instance, Mr. Lovell came within 6 votes of defeating Melford Nicholas in City East. All right. And Jonathan Joseph came within 40 votes of defeating Malvin Joseph in St. Mary's North.
Okay.
Yeah. So had they won those 2 seats, it would have given the UPP a majority of the seats in the House of Representatives. Yeah. As it stands now, there are 9 seats on the Labour Party side. Mr. Assad, and that's another issue that we could talk about.
Yes, we have to touch Mr. Assad tonight for sure.
Mr. Assad won his seat hands down in St. Peter, and of course in Barbuda, the Barbuda's People's Movement won a resounding victory, in spite of the fact that the Prime Minister was on Barbuda on Tuesday, reportedly handing out cash.
Wow.
On Wednesday, on Tuesday. On Wednesday, on the very day of election, he was on Barbuda handing out cash.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very, very interesting indeed. So you are saying, based on the numbers that you guys saw, Mr. Lovell, the opposition leader then, has since resigned, came 6 votes short. And also this Jonathan guy came 40 votes short that the numbers are showing so far.
Yes. All right. And in all the other constituencies, except I think the Prime Minister's own, the UPP candidates did very well. In fact, in St. Philip's North, where veteran politician Robin Yearwood has been undefeated since 1976, the UPP candidate, a new candidate, Alex Brown, came within less than 200 votes of taking that seat from Robin Yearwood.
Yeah. Well, 2 characters, two political characters I must add, we must touch on tonight before we end, is Mr. Yearwood and Mr. Michaels, for sure. Very interesting characters.
Indeed.
Yeah. But just to put those numbers, the 40 plus 6 votes that you spoke of, just to contextualize them for listeners and viewers could get a better grasp of what you said there.
Yes.
Do you know, Brother Spencer, were there any rejected ballots in those constituencies, Lovell and Jonathan?
Yes, there were. Let me tell you, I don't have rejected ballots. If you give me a moment here, in terms of St. Mary's North, there were rejected ballots, St. Mary's North. Let me pull that up for you here. St. Mary's North. St. Mary's North. Jonathan, there were 22 rejected ballots.
Okay, 22.
All right. The DNA candidate, because there was a third party in the race. Yes. Let us not forget that. The third party DNA polled 28 votes.
Okay.
All right. So the ALP candidate, Mr. Malvin Joseph, polled 1,664 votes. Jonathan Joseph of the UPP polled 615 votes. You see, so when you add the reject 22 as well as the 28, that would give you a total of 50. All right. But his numbers show that he came within, given the 664 versus, 1664 versus 1615. So that would give you really a margin there of approximately 40 votes.
Yes.
Yeah?
Okay. Yeah. That those numbers make more sense because you said 615 the first time.
Yeah. No. 1664
1,615.
Right. Versus 1615.
Which is
all right. Yes. With the DNA, the third party in the race polling 28, and there were 22 rejected ballots from that constituency.
Okay.
So you see how very close
very tight.
that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about Lovell's constituency now? In terms
Lovell ran in City East, which is a relatively small constituency. All right. And the interesting factor, of course, there as well was the DNA candidate. So Melford Nicholas of the ABLP polled 791 votes, and Lovell polled 785 votes. There were 13 from the DNA, and there were exactly 6 rejected ballots. All right. In that constituency, there was a double count. Mr. Lovell asked for a recount after, that first time around, and they ended up with the same numbers. And consequent upon his third defeat in that constituency, because he had held that constituency for 2 terms under the UPP government, 2004 to 2014. And since then, in the subsequent elections, including this one, he had been defeated. On the basis of that, he tendered his resignation. I must say that the ALP pulled out all the stops in terms of what you call this headship kind of approach to decapitate the head of the organization, and the organization will fold on that kind of theory. Lovell was targeted tremendous amount of resources poured into that constituency. Let me also say, Loftus, for their listeners, that one of the phenomena that we tracked, that where the UPP scored resounding victories were generally in the country areas.
Okay.
All right, where a preponderance of Antiguans reside, native-born Antiguans. And where it scored a victory, the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party, were in those St. John's constituencies where there are large numbers of non-nationals. All right, and I make this point because very early in his term as Prime Minister, going back to 2014, Prime Minister Brown had boldly declared that Antiguans were a minority in the population. All right, and I took in for dig that a prime minister would draw attention to this, because if one would extrapolate, so to speak, from that kind of comment, it was clear, and we saw the strategy. It was clear then that the government would pander to the interests of non-nationals over the interests of native-born Antiguans and Barbudans. I want to say that Antigua is an interesting place, all right? Where we welcome our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and also brothers from Fatherfield. And I'm sure, Loftus, you're going to come back to that issue of the Africans who were transshipped from Africa in large numbers to Antigua, right? And people might want to say, hey, it's like a playback to the days of the days when our ancestors were transshipped as slaves to, in terms of human trafficking. All right. But I make that point quickly that in the country areas. I was embedded in the campaign of Cleon Attil, Dr. Cleon Attil, in the St. Paul's area. All right. And we noted, and I was doubling over as the person who was tracking the counting of the votes for her. And that was a really interesting experience because she also came within 145 votes because she was being written off by lots of people because of her campaign style and so on. She said, listen.
Just before Mr. Spencer, you go to, you dive deeper into Dr. Cleon article, which we must get to as well. But let us go back to that 6 votes loss in Mr. Harold Lovell's constituency.
Yeah.
I was in Antigua and Barbuda, and brother Thomas, I'm coming to you in a while, huh? I'm coming to you in a while.
No problem.
Thomas, I'm just trying to get something correct.
No, go ahead. It's very interesting. I'm listening intently. Go ahead.
Because Brother Spencer, I was in Antigua on the ground, and I kept hearing over and over that there were 6 rejected ballots in Brother Lovell, Harold Lovell's constituency, but nobody could confirm. So it's very good that you're confirming that there were 6 rejected ballots. What I was asking feverishly, that is in Antigua and Barbuda then, was, would you guys over there, well, I guess you're the agents for the UPP and the ALP would have seen those 6 rejected ballots, right? During the process, the counting process.
Well, I mean, I wasn't there in our lovers.
But the agents would have seen those rejected ballots.
I would want to think so. I mean, based on my experience in Cleon Attil's process, that we would have, I mean, they would have to be shown. I mean, they would have to be shown to the agents, the counting agents of both parties, right? I mean, in the case where I was inserted in Cleon's own, there was one rejected. There was one ballot that we challenged. It was shown to us initially, and they returned, the presiding officer was about to maybe let it pass. Okay. But we challenged it, all right? And subsequently, she checked with maybe her higher ups, who affirmed the position that we had taken in terms of that particular ballot.
Okay. I ask you that question, and I would like to follow up on that question. In that, even if these ballots, the 6 ballots, were reject ballots, fine. That is confirmed. They were rejected ballots. But did you guys get, and maybe I'm asking a question that is, maybe you haven't gone into us yet, but I'm asking that for a specific reason, because any reject ballot, Brother Spencer, when that ballot is scrutinized, it most likely will show the intent of the voter, even if it is rejected at the end of the day. Would you know, or would you be apprised of the intent of these 6 voters in terms of how they were willing to vote, even if they were rejected? Okay,
well, they would have been rejected on the basis that that the will of the voter could not be determined. I will cite a couple of examples from as I said, my stint. One voter I remember wrote, and there were 3 candidates. So he or she wrote L for the first, on the box for the first one, 0 on the box for the second one, and L on the box for the third one.
Meaning LOL.
LOL, right? All right. So you would have a situation like that. So it is where you could not determine. There were some voters, there was clearly a box that you should mark your X in. But clearly there were some voters who would have marked the X, let's say, on the sun, which was the symbol for the UPP. So that clearly you could determine that was the will. Or if the person might have marked the X on the symbol for the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, you could clearly determine, all right? There were a number of cases where there was no mark put at all on the ballot paper. Okay. So if there was no mark, you understand? True. I mean, with the election officials there, with the agents of both parties being vigilant, and because we saw our role as being there to ensure the integrity of the process. All right. And so we were very vigilant in terms of with each ballot to ensure that the will of the electorate would be determined.
Okay.
And I believe that, that experience being so close in City East, I believe the agents of Mr. Lovell, because they asked for a recount.
Okay.
The recount was done and they came up with the same numbers.
Okay.
So they, I'm sure, would have satisfied themselves.
Yes. Okay.
That those 6 votes are to be rejected, and therefore they would not mount a challenge.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thanks for that clarifying or clarification of those 6 votes lost and 6 votes reject. Because trust me, they created a stir on the ground in Antigua and Barbuda. I can tell you that. I'm sure they would. Because the consequence of winning or losing was so enormous for Mr. Lovell. All right. And I must at this point make a plug for Mr. Lovell, a gentleman that I've known since the late 70s during the teacher's strike. A man I regard as being of very good sterling character. All right. A man to be admired, a statesman. No accolades in my view are too high to give to this gentleman. And I must admit there might be a little bit of a political bias, but I think that when one makes a comparison with our current prime minister, all right, what one hears from his most ardent supporters is that they admire his strength. I don't know. I know we said there's a thin line between confidence and arrogance, right? So it, maybe the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Yeah. And maybe the beauty is in the eyes of the political affiliation or support of the person who's there making that judgment. But clearly, the ABLP had gone after Mr. Lovell in a very strong way in an attempt to decapitate him. But I thought he led the UPP and its campaign in a very good, dynamic, strategic way. Yes. At the beginning, the prime minister had said, well, in lambasting the UPP, was saying that, and this is something I'm sure left us, we talked about in terms of political, constitutional and electoral reform, and the need to have a fixed election date, rather than leaving that in the hands of a prime minister to call it when he deems the situation is in his favor. Yeah. All right, and to give him what I would call an unfair advantage. So then he had caught the UPP still reeling maybe from the shock of the defeat in 2014 and not yet fully organized or reorganized. So he had caught them in 2018. And just as in Dominica, I think he might have been mulling an early elections for the same reasons that were advanced by your prime minister in Dominica. All right, hoping to catch the UPP off its guard. But when UPP decided to get organized early, then there was another kind of argument being put out that they would suffer from burnt out by the time the election would have been called. I keep hearing Mr. Lovell saying, listen, we have the strategy to be able to go for the long haul, or to go for the medium term, or to go for the short term. So he said, whatever the approach was, whatever election was called, that we would be ready. And the reality now, and the excuse that I hear the prime minister making, which I've seen on the media, was that they and some of the BLP supporters, that they did not give themselves enough time to do the mobilization. I want to throw a lot of cold water on that, right? In a sense, because you are the prime minister. As in on previous occasions, he would have said that election would become like a thief in the night. Yeah. And only he would have held the cards as to when. So one would have liked to think that he would have been doing the organizing and doing the preparatory
processes of his party internally, because he would have had that date in mind. All right, but we feel that there were other circumstances that we know that along the way, he felt that given the problems that given the fact that they had not solved the water problem, which was a big issue, has been a big issue in Antigua. All right, given the fact that civil servants had not been paid, pensioners could not, get paid for months and months. There were all these levels of unrest in the country, dissatisfaction, that he, I think, would have felt that he had to maybe try to call the election at a time that he figured the circumstances would have been in his favor. So it set that date. It set the date as January 18th, and then turn now come and say, hey, I mean, and supporters saying, well, we didn't have the time to campaign like the UPP did and so on. Well, the UPP campaign, but the UPP campaign on.
We'll get to the UPP in terms of the strategy and campaign, which you're adding fan of. But let me now bring in Brother Thomas into the conversation. Thank you very much, Brother Spencer, for sort of laying the foundation, as it were, so that we can have, we could understand, especially the listeners and viewers out there, understand the conversation much better. Folks, please, I beseech you at this time, share the live as you're listening to the conversation. Let not the conversation be, one of a greedy one. Please share the live to your different contacts out there. Kenda Philogen, you're listening. Kendra is writing there. Anne, Robin, 6 rejected ballots, Lovell lost by 6 votes. Earl Bruno is saying that he's loving the program. Janisha Jacques says, hey, Manu, Juanita Prince, you're there. Good evening to you. Peter Carbon, good evening. Juanita Prince again. Yes, locked in. I call that name already. Celia Gordon, Ziska, Sarah, and the list goes on and on. So, folks, please share the live as we are having this conversation here. Brother Thomas, I know you have been, silently listening, as you said. I need to rope you in now, as it were.
Yeah, certainly, Lofty. Thanks, man. Let me first of all congratulate Brother Spencer and his party for what I would consider a win, a good win. As I understand it, Brother Spencer, you guys got what, 7 seats, 1 independent. Is that correct? That's the 8 in the opposition. Do I have that correct?
Well, no, the UPP as a party, the UPP as a party. And guys, I want to make this disclaimer that I am not a card-carrying member of the UPP.
Right. You were
supported. Okay.
I am affiliated with an entity called the Movement for Good Governance.
Okay. So the UPP got how many seats?
The UPP got 6 seats.
6 seats. Okay.
Yeah, Assad Michael.
Independent guy got 1.
Former member of the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party.
Right.
Who was rejected by Prime Minister Gaston Brown.
Right.
And I'm sure
Barbuda had 1. So that's
and the Barbuda People's Movement.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Well, let me still say congratulations to the UPP on what I would consider a win, and I think you have outlined and give us a good overview of what transpired. But what is operating in my mind, and maybe we can speak to that in some way throughout the program, is and what led to that. And the reason why I'm saying that, the Antigua election came right on the heels of Grenada election. Grenada was held a couple months ago in June of last year, June 23rd of last year. And in Grenada, you had a situation where the Keith Mitchell New National Party had all 15 seats when he contested in 2013 and back again in 2018. So it was a 15-0. So for 9 years, the National Democratic Congress, the NDC, which won the last election in June, led by Dickon Mitchell, was in the opposition. Now, that shift occurred, and from my understanding and based on the data that was available, seems to suggest that young people were fully engaged in the electoral process. Prime Minister Dick himself is a young man. I think he's just 42 or 41, thereabout. Now, we are seeing pretty much 6 months later, thereabout, in Antigua, almost a shift again. Whereas prior to that, Gaston Brown had a 15-2, I think it was, in the parliament. Now at a 9-8, barely having just a 1-seat majority. So it would be interesting to note, although I heard you said about the voters in the country area, wherever, it would be interesting to note what led to that shift and to what extent have young people been engaged in the process. Because one of my things I've said there repeatedly, and Lofty have heard me 110 times, if not more, young people have to take charge and control of their destiny in the region. I mean, guys like you and I, David, we have a role to play still. Like you said, you were not a card member of the UPP, but what you saw happening in your country allowed you to come forward and say, hey, we got to change what is taking place. And I'm saying that we have to find a way, a strategy, if needs be, to have young persons engage. The population, rather, of young people in the region and worldwide is 50, I believe, and I can verify those numbers, 50 or more percent of the world population is made up of young persons. And when we talk about young persons, for definition's sake, under the UN, we're talking of persons 15 up to 18 years old. They're considered young, okay? By definition of the United Nations, what they consider young people.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is that whatever is being done in the region in terms of development, job creation, you name it, is geared towards young persons. Making putting young persons in a position where they can earn a living, they can get a job, they can work, they don't have to go on their knees to any minister, go to any red clinic or blue clinic. So that is so important. So maybe at some point in the conversation, we can find out what role did young people play. But certainly, I think we need to look at those two elections and see the parallels, and then, of course, extrapolate that with what we are experiencing in Dominica. And in terms of the strategy, what kind of strategies can we implement in our Dominica setting to change that situation?
Yes, Brother Spencer.
Okay, all right. Thank you for those comments and questions, Mr. Thomas. Now, I'm sure you left out, I don't know if it's by design or whatever, you left out this situation in Barbados, where they've had, 2 elections and with such overwhelming majorities by the Mayor Mottley administration.
Exactly.
Now, it will be interesting to see what happens come the next turnout.
Certainly.
Whether the opposition, the DLP, will be able to regroup, reorganize, and resuscitate itself to mount a challenge to the BLP. But certainly,
let me just quickly stick one pin there, which I want you to address, and that is the involvement and role of women. I don't want to leave them out, because I'll tell you, if I'm running a campaign as a political leader of a party, I want as many of those women on my side, okay? Because they do a much better job than we the men sometimes.
Listen, I mean, Brother Thomas, I've been saying all week, and maybe for a little while now, that the female of the species, even when you go to the animal kingdom, the lion, the lioness can be more ferocious than the male. All right, maybe she knows that she has the cub to defend and nurture and so on. All right, so the female of our most of our political work and organizing and the bulwark, so to speak, that is done by women. and the extent to which we also need to give them greater representation at the table, not just to be the hewers of wood and drawers of water, so to speak. I note in the case of Dominica that you have you broke the mold, so to speak, in the Caribbean with your Dame Eugenia Chas, but also with the number of women who have been contesting and being MPs in the Dominica situation. So you have led the way in that respect. And it's something that we need to continue to nurture and so on. So we want to see reflected in the candidates, the numbers corresponding with the numbers of women who are out there in the campaign to ensure they have an equal place at the head table. All right. With respect to youth, we all agree, and I must confess, and I shout up Simeon Joseph, my big brother in Dominica, Patrick Henderson, and my ex MBA classmate John Roach, and my many other friends and colleagues and family members in Dominica. But the future of the region, as we always say, everything depends on our young people and the extent to which we can engage them, we can develop. And as I was saying, as a teacher, I teach social sciences and Caribbean history, 2 areas which allow me to try to develop that kind of critical consciousness, all right, of the people, the young people I teach, that engagement and so on. So that what I see as my role to afford them that ability to think and think critically and analytically. All right. So the extent to which we involve our young people in political processes, the extent to which we involve young people in terms of self-governance, even at the school level, by establishing student councils. You guys might not know it, but I also came out of a background of working with the Caribbean Conference of Churches. And Loftus, this is where my Dominican connection is so great, because we did tremendous amount of work with the in Dominica as well. All right. So to that extent that we nurture and develop this critical consciousness. Now I hear the Ministry of Education here in Antigua talk about introducing civics in school. That's been a long call that's been long made, that we need to engage our youth in the understanding of themselves and the world that they live in and their place in the world. Our young people are now, many of them they're reading less than they are to. They're now locked into the media world, social media world. But we still have to engage them. We have to use those tools, get them to use those tools in ways that will widen their understanding, and also to try to still immerse them in the way we can in the realities of the Caribbean and our relationship Caribbean and what I would say the wider people of African descent. Give them that sense of history and understanding of themselves and so on. So the extent to which we do that will determine what happens in the Caribbean. Unfortunately, lots of young people are also caught up in what I would call the meism, right? As long as it's about me and I can get a little job. In fact, interestingly, one of the BLP radio personality was saying that all young people want, all they want is a little job, a little car to drive, a little money in their pocket, and that is all that is enough for them. And we have seen policies and programs that seem to underwrite that, but not underwrite the need for more meaningful engagement in Antigua and Barbuda. The UPP had put in its manifesto, quite commendable, and the candidate who was articulating this in Mr. Simon in St. Mary's South, a new candidate who had a very strong connection with the young people, all right, and he pointed that out, that he got to where he got in defeating Samantha Marshall because of the support given to the young people, because of his connection with them through sports. You understand? So we need again to also look at how we can even use sports as a means of mobilizing, remobilizing, educating, engaging young people. And sports, as we've always been saying, can be used as a means of bringing education.
All right, folks, we apologize here. I think we just got a breakdown in terms of not being able to hear Brother Spencer. I guess that is
the brain drain.
All right, we were not hearing you for a little while, Brother Spencer, so welcome back.
Oh, sorry. No, I was saying the extent to which we can engage young people in meaningful ways.
Yeah, sure.
All right. We'll determine what happens to the region. And we need to involve them very young, get them excited.
Yeah.
About participating in the political process. Validate them, give them a sense of validation and ownership and involvement.
True. Thank you very much, my brother.
You say there was a large turnout of young people in Antigua this time around?
There, you know, it would be difficult to at this point. I haven't got the figures, all right, but there would have been a more than before. Before there was, as we said, the enthusiasm was on the side of the UPP. There were a lot of young people as well. Have always been a lot of young people in the Labour Party campaign. You see them, they're very visible, and you always wonder to what extent many of them even had the right to vote at the age of 18. All right, because what the ALP engages is a lot of what we say, renting of vehicles for young people to drive and so on. All right, so the UPP would have been able, overall, in terms of the number of people that it was able to get out this time, had moved from, I think, about 14,000 in 2018 to just over 19,000 in this time around. So that, yeah, we note in Antigua as well that it was claimed that there were close to 10,000 new persons who registered to vote this time around.
Yeah, what brother Spencer, just sticking opinion, what will give us a good snapshot as to answering the question that Brother Alvin Thomas asked is, do you have on there now in terms of data, how many persons cast their ballots in Antigua and Barbuda versus the population? Would you have
yes.
Yes.
Yes, I can, but yes. Okay, first of all, there was an overall 70% turnout.
Okay. So
there was 70. The total number of electors was 60,916.
Okay.
All right. And I'm sorry, Loftus. I mean, maybe if we had more time, I would have sent you this information.
Well, please send it to me, because there must be follow-up conversations for sure.
I can still send it to you even whilst we're speaking.
Yes, no problem. Right. I would appreciate that.
Right. And then in terms of the total number of votes cast, we had 42,849. So that gave it essentially a 70% voter turnout. Now, it is significant that the lowest voter, there were, I think, 1, 2, 3 figures of basically 2 figures of 64% turnout. And one was in the Prime Minister's constituency. Yeah. And the other one was in, again, another Labour Malwin Joseph constituency. So in those 2 constituencies where we had recorded the lowest voter turnout, and the highest being in Barbuda, of course, 85%, followed by 80% in Sherfield Boyne constituency, which is a small constituency, is St. Philip South.
Okay.
And
Okay. Yeah. But thanks for
Let
the
me
dates. And as you said, you can send it to. But what?
Yes.
Quick question. What is the population now vis-a-vis that voters 60,000? What's
All
the
right.
Antigua population? That's
And I know,
because
I
you know
know,
in our case what the situation is.
and I know why you asked it, and I know the
Okay.
Dominica, and I know the Dominica situation, the backdrop of the
Tell me
Dominica.
the population.
The population has been said to be approximately 100,000. All right, that's been said to be the population of Antigua. Why we say approximately?
But registered this time around, what was the registered population in terms of
the registered number of electors? The number of electors was 60,916.
Right, and the population.
Yeah. And you're asking about the overall population.
Yes.
And
yes,
I'm saying to you that for a long time now, we've been talking about an approximate figure, because we haven't done a census in more recent time. And the last census, which was done maybe about 2014 or so, 2012, I think 2012, the last census, which was done, the figures were, preliminary and not conclusive. So that we haven't had a census in more recent times. So we've been just guesstimating what the population, total population of Antigua and Barbuda is. All right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Good,
Thanks for
That's
that.
interesting.
Thanks for that.
Yes.
Barring the census, though, I did a little research whilst I was in Antigua as well, and based on 2022, in terms of you guys' population, it came up somewhere around 94,000 thereabout. So guesstimating around there.
Yeah.
Then we can work with that vis-a-vis the electors, which was, as you said, about 60-something thousand. So in my estimation, as Alvin asked, 70% turnout, voter turnout that you alluded to earlier, some 85% like in Barbuda. To me, the young persons are indeed participating in some way, shape, or form. The numbers we may want to increase, but anything past 70-75% voter turnout in any country, to me, there's a good chunk, a good portion of the younger people participating in that kind of process. So thanks for clarification.
Yeah. The tendency, gentlemen, the tendency across the Caribbean is for lower and lower percentage turnout of the voters, except where you might have occasionally those kind of national issues or issues that really generate a lot of interest and concern. So that we have been trending downwards from maybe 90-something%, in the 60s, coming downwards.
Yeah. All right, brothers, it is 7 o'clock now, and we have to now acknowledge those persons who are there with us. They are part and parcel of the conversation as well. So before we move across, Brother Spencer, into Dr. Cleon Attil and Dr. what's his name? Well, he's the doctor himself, Asot Michael and the others. Let us get a feel as to what our persons are saying on the live here. Folks, remember the numbers to call. Yes, you can call to prevent me from reading. They are 245-2396 or 615-9470. All right. John Blanchard is writing here. It was a very close call. In addition to the 2 seats mentioned by the gentleman, it was also close in St. Philip's North and St. Mary's North. When you add up the votes that the UPP, ASOT, and the Bermuda People's Movement got, it is more than what the Labour Party got. So John Blanchard is saying there in a categorical manner, so the people voted against the ALP. Would you agree with that, Brother Spencer?
Definitely. Yes, that calculation has been done here and it's been observed. So what is being said is that the ABLP really is when you look at the plurality of votes, the ABLP is a minority government based on that. But we operate a first past the post system instead of a proportional representation system, which is one of the issues that some persons have said, in terms of electoral reform. We need to go in that direction.
Yes, indeed. Another comment is coming in here from Earl Bruno. He writes here, it is easy like 1 to 3 because just one to go and it is by, it's easy like 1 to 3 because just one to go and is by thy like to buy. Earl, fix up that comment, brother, and we can get back to that comment. All right. Leo Bontif is right in here. I will just like to know at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's when the Antigua declared Gaston Brown a winner. But in Dominica polling stations, before polling stations closed by 6 or 7 p.m., Skerrit is already declared winner. Are they actually counting all the votes in Dominica? Well, Bontif, that is a very, very interesting comment here. But around what time, in terms of confirmation, was Gaston Brown declared winner or his team?
Well, I mean, the honest truth is that I do not know. I was embedded in the Clay and Attles campaign counting votes.
Okay.
And we finished at approximately 3 a.m. when Mr. Chet Paul Green was declared the winner. We got off to a late start in counting the votes because there's some of the anachronisms that exist in our system include moving the ballots from wherever they were cast to one central counting station. So, for instance, in St. Paul's, there were two stations essentially for voting, one in English Harbour and the other in Liberta, and then all the boxes had to be moved to Liberta to be counted. And we didn't get off until after 9, closer to 10, and had to count over 3,000 ballots. All right, so that's part of the anachronism that we need to look at in Antigua as to how, and as well as, other aspects of reform that need to take to make the process more efficient.
Yeah. All right, thanks, brother. I think I got the gist of what Earl Bruno's comment here is. Earl is right in here, just like 1 to 3, because just one to go, and they like to buy, like basically buying persons out there in terms of the voting. And Earl is saying basically is money that keeps parties rather in our region winning the election. Those who have the deeper pockets.
Well, Lofty, I don't know if let me just briefly comment on that, and I know Brother David Spencer will. But yes and no, because again, let's use the parallel here. I mean, granted, Gaston Brown won by just one majority, one seat, and he had a deep pocket. And even in Grenada, Keith Mitchell had the CBI program. Keith Mitchell was going for his 6th term. And he had money. He had the CBI program. So there was money. But notwithstanding that, people chose to throw him out of office. So I think it all goes back to what Brother Spencer said, the engagement on the ground. How do you get your women more involved with your campaign and the message? How do you get the young people? I think that is critical because we've seen in the past, in Dominica, for example, parties prior to Skerrit doing his little nonsense, win and loss. And as I said, in Grenada, Keith had money, Aston had money. So I think, yes, while I'm not dismissing it completely, I think if we can get our people sufficiently engaged, mobilized, and you have a winning strategy, we can overcome that.
All right. Alvin, I know where you want to go. I hear you. I understand you. But you see, Alvin, with me just going out there and visiting for myself, so I could be in the know. You see, Dominica, Alvin, Dominica is a very, very peculiar country. and peculiar in more ways than one. And you see these young people, Alvin, that you keep, pouncing on in terms of they being engaged to get the job done. It would be my, it would be my pleasure for these young people, Alvin, that you keep calling on to get out there and do the work or help in the work that needs to be done to salvage what is left of this country. But from where I see it, Alvin, sometimes I tell myself in conversations with people sometimes, the young people, the younger people in Dominica that we bank on sometimes to get that job done, they did not, and they are still not getting that proper foundation that is needed to effect that change, Alvin. So it is triple times hard for us in Dominica vis-a-vis Antigua, Grenada, Barbuda, wherever. Young persons that are engaging in Antigua, they were not that far off in terms of conversation when I interacted with them on the ground. They were not that far off. Some, their listening span was short, that I understood. But in Dominica, Alvin, take any young person from any constituency and open up or try to open up a conversation with them about how their country has been managed, how their country has been run, how the country is doing, and try to put them in that category whereby they are the agents of change and get their response. Most of them, 80% of them tell you, oh, I'm not involved in politics. No, I don't bring in your politics. And now you see that kind of response, Alvin, it says a lot when I get that on the ground. So I'm not throwing cold water, Alvin, on your push or your quest for young people in Dominica to get involved. But I believe that is my opinion and I stand by it. Our young people that we have today, from the 18 to 35, 40 thereabout, we have to basically put the message out there, but not be so inclined that these people will take that message and effect the change. We have to start much younger, the 5, the 7-year-olds, bring them up in that sort of, civic-minded education, curriculum, whatever it is. And let us see if these younger people now will rise to the occasion and take the place and do what we expect in the 18 to the early 40s to do for us, Alvin. I have very little confidence in that age range because what these persons have known for the past 20 years, Alvin, it doesn't lend itself to that kind of national construct that we're talking about. And so they need to prove me wrong. The 18 to the 40s need to prove me wrong to basically get to that point that you're talking about. In my mind, finally, I have left these young people behind and I'm now trying to concentrate now on the kindergarten, the 5, the 7, to go up to like 15, 16 to see if something can stick so that Dominica in the next 5, 10 years can be the beneficiary of what exactly you have been alluding to, Alvin. That is my take, straight from the heart.
Well, Lofty, I appreciate that. And obviously you're on the ground, so you see it from a different pair of lens. But in terms of strategy, I mean, we could have a complete program on that. But I don't want to take time because I know brother
Spencer have to go at 8
he has to go.
And we want to get much from him.
We can have a different program on that.
True.
Because the situation as it obtains in Dominica is not unique to Dominica. I think on the previous programs, I make reference to the Arab Spring, which started revolution by young people, something that they never thought would have happened. Never in their wildest dream. And we know what happened with the Arab Spring uprising. So it all depends on strategy. And maybe the question is how do we engage? Do we engage them and say, well, hey, we want you to get rid of the government? Or do we engage them to say, well, hey, tell me what are your problems? Tell me what are you confronting? Tell me what is it you like? Tell me what is it you want? Tell me what you're looking forward to as a young 30-year-old or 20-year-old. Rather than going to them and say, well, hey, we want to get rid of scary or we want to get rid of the government. But engage them in terms of what they want. So it may be strategy. But as I said, that would be for a different program.
A different program. Let's get back to Antigua situation. Brother Spencer, we have to talk about, Cleon Artil, how close she came. Asot Michael, a powerhouse in St. Peter. And you mentioned one other. And I also have to talk to you about Mr. Yerud as well, in terms of that man, I'm being told, have been winning elections since 1976.
Yes, sir.
I was born, Spencer, in 1976. I am 46, getting 47.
Wow.
So what has Mr. Yearwood brought to the table that his people keep, electing him over and over again?
Love that. The biggest joke. The biggest joke that people up in Willie Keys, because that constituency includes Willie Keys and New Field, right? To village. And they said essentially it was New Field that really put him over the hill, because New Field is a village. They said that when you go there, when the sun hits like 4 o'clock, you don't see it anymore. It gets dark very early in Newfield. Okay. And I don't know if that is, they're saying that is reflective of the lack of enough sunlight to extend enlightenment to the people of Newfield. But the other people have said that if Columbus came back to Antigua, you've heard that? If Columbus came back to Antigua, he would not find himself in a strange place. He would find Newfield to be very, very familiar. Willie Keys to be very familiar. All right. So that what they're saying is that there is very little change in the overall physical, environmental, living space situation in Willie Keys. Now, within the Labour Party government, Robin Yearwood has been the Minister of Public Utilities. All right. In Antigua, there are endless, of course, under whom the water falls. Okay. Right. And the Gaston Brown administration said it would have addressed the water problem that also plagued the UPP within 14 days. Gaston was at one time telling the Robin to hurry up and address the water problem so I can call general elections. I think he really wanted to call general elections in November, all right, by which time the tourist season would have started, all right, and so he could have piggyback with the upswing in mood and upswing in employment and so on. So APUA didn't get the water problem addressed. Up to now, the water problem has not been addressed in terms of people being able to turn on the pipes and can be guaranteed that you have water, government water, pipe-borne water, let's say 3 days a week, because they had put out a schedule that they never adhered to. So of course, UPP made water a big issue. It's a burning issue for a lot of people in Antigua. Robin Yearwood had made a statement back in 2014 that was used to slam him. That says, well, mommy want to bathe, papi want to bathe, baby want to bathe, and if you support this government, you are wicked, non-Antiguan. That was a statement he made in 2014. Well, now we're in 2023, and he has been unable to address that problem. Wow. We've had reverse osmosis. We have, and even though the government has given up on doing surface water dams and so on. But of course, Robin Yearwood as well has become a very rich man. A very rich man in Antigua, and I think it's known public knowledge that he had a divorce.
Nearly 50 years at that.
Well,
no surprise, huh?
Well, I mean, 50 years, but when you say 50 years being at what? The feeding trough, the illegal feeding trough, because Antigua is a very corrupt place, going way back on the VC. All right. One of the methods of corruption, of course, was to take deals under the table. When an investor wanted any project, they had to get their cut under the table. All right. And that's been going on for a long time and so on. So he now, just to give you a little, indication of Robin Yarwood's wealth, it was said that he is a partner in 11 hotels or businesses in Antigua. His wife, might have been his first wife, had a divorce. She divorced him a couple of years back. And he could easily spit out £8 million as a settlement for that divorce without blinking an eye. All right. So, I mean, that would reflect the amount of wealth that he has garnered. Could not have come, gentlemen, could not have come just from his wages or salaries as a parliamentarian, no matter how long he would have served, in the House of Representatives. So you couple that with the neglect, one of the ways that he had maintained himself in power through the patronage was the employment of large numbers of people from his constituency within the Antigua and Barbuda Public Utilities Authority. All right. And that is one of the approaches that politicians in Antigua take. You might want to note it in Dominica too.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So basically using the office to, get political patronage as well.
Right. So Antigua
in the interest of time, we need to switch gear a little bit to Asset Michael because it's already 7:27.
Let me ask you a question on that.
Yes.
The gentleman who beat Yearwood.
No, he didn't beat him. He didn't beat him. He came close. He came close, yes.
He came close. And he's a newcomer, Alex Brown. He's a newcomer, first time out. But, I think the voters in that constituency, many of them would have become fatigued, tired, eventually with that kind of lack of representation, lack of improvement in their circumstances.
Let us switch gear to Mr. Michael.
Yes. Asset Michael.
Yeah, what can you tell us about this figure?
Well, Asset Michael, interestingly, Asset Michael, is he is one of the Middle Eastern gentlemen. He's he's an Arab, so to speak.
Okay.
Born in Antigua, grandparents born in Antigua, went to school here, was the protege of Lester Bird. So Lester Bird brought him into the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party. His first act of notoriety was after Hurricane Louis in 1995, when for the reconstruction purposes, Lester put him in charge, gave him 3.5 million, and no visible project could be seen of how that money was spent. He had been the bagman of the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party, the money man. He had been the man who had financed, campaign and so on and so on. So eventually he was put in a St. Peter's constituency. He has been there for 20 years. He had been there for 20 years before this general election. Developed that very strong relationship with the constituency. In Antigua, I mean, we always laugh and say, Assad doesn't campaign. Assad simply goes to the constituency and asks, "What you want?"
Exactly. So my question to you on that, how you said he developed that strong relationship with the constituents. How did he go about doing that? How?
Well, patronage. Well, first of all, at one time he was Minister of Public Works during the Lester Bird constituency, and there were reports that on a Friday afternoon you would have dozens of people from St. Peter who would simply go and line up and wait for the cool out. Yes, I found the word. They would go and wait for their cool out on a Friday afternoon. And being a wealthy man, being a man, you have some means and so on, and some of this wealth gotten to very questionable circumstances. I will cite one of them quickly. Around the late 1990s, the Antigua government got a loan from a company in Japan called IHI for the Antigua Barbuda public utilities. And then when the UPP came to power, it found that what had happened, on top of the repayment of that loan, Assad Michael, together with Lester Bird and Bruce Rappaport, who then had the monopoly of West Indies oil and to import, oil products into Antigua, they had pegged onto that something like an additional 60 million US that would go to them over the 25-year life of that project. All right. Assad Michael kept bringing injunctions after injunctions during the UPP term until the UPP tenure ran out. Bruce Rappaport paid back something like 12 million US dollars or 30 million EC. Lester died without ever admitting or being brought to justice for his role in that wicked saga. Anyway,
so was just a question on that note. Was that situation ventilated in a court of law?
They said, as I said, the information is there. In fact, interestingly, the files disappeared. The files disappeared from the office of the DPP in Antigua. All right, but the UPP had been trying to bring that matter to justice, but Assad kept filing injunctions, as I said, after injunctions. So the process was delayed. Okay. Then the UPP ran out of time. ABLP came to office. It seemed as though that was put on the back burner, maybe because at the time, Assad and Gaston were good. So
I now get a proper, better understanding of where that is at. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Right. And then there were other scandals along the way. Assad was arrested in England over some kind of attempt to get money out of from an investor named Peter Verdi, and so there's been this. So eventually now, Gaston declared that he did not want Assad to be in his party. He cited Assad. He felt Assad was too corrupt. I felt it was a case of pot telling kettle it was black. All right.
Wait. Let's just stick up in there. Gaston Brown chose to get rid of Assad because of what?
The allegation that he was making publicly. It was that Assad was too corrupt and he didn't want him in his government. This was after the 2018 election that Assad ran on his ticket and was embraced by.
Did he mention any specific case in terms of that corruption he spoke of?
Well, he spoke about the Peter Verdi. Okay. So you ended up with a situation where both of them were throwing barbs at each other as to who was more corrupt. At one time, Assad was telling Gaston essentially that prior to you coming to office in 2014, you could hardly not put $2 together. All right, and now suddenly you are a wealthy man. All right, and so your source of wealth will come out soon. You understand? It is felt that the showdown maybe was one about power and leadership, that maybe Gaston figured that Assad was positioning himself to maybe challenge him for the leadership.
Okay.
So eventually now Assad had taken the ABLP to court for not observing its own constitutional procedures. All right, because they wanted to replace him with a guy named Rawdon Turner. All right, so it took the party to court. There was a judgment stating that they need to comply with their party procedure, and that which included, of course, giving Assad due notice of when whatever election was to be held. All right, so that had not been done. I think going into just before the election, Assad, there was a judgment passed by the High Court, which basically cleared the way for the ABLP candidate to contest the election.
Okay.
All right. At one time, it got so to the point where Gaston said to Assad, if he thought the 2,000 and 5,000 money that he was giving out in his constituency was enough to get the support, that was peanut change, that, you know. And so the thing on the ground now is how pampered, how much bought, how well the people of power in the constituency of St. Peter would have been bought by both parties combined, both of them competing to outdo them,
Yeah, well,
to outdo each other with that. But Assad, and you might have seen the little video, there was a case where Gaston threatened to thump Assad in his face.
yes, I saw that.
Right? Yeah, that video, right. And it was over the fact that they both groups ended up at the house of a constituent. And eventually their constituent came out and said, well, I concluded that the Prime Minister must have shelled out some very choice words in the presence of children and the neighbors, and the woman really was thoroughly upset and went and made a public statement about the matter. Yeah, so the long and short of it is that Assad won the seat overwhelmingly, all right? And he is one of those who got the turnout in that constituency was 80%. And so he was able to defeat both Turner and the candidate of the UPP. I think the UPP supporters was hoping that between himself and Turner, they would have split the Labour Party vote, and that the guy, Harriet Lydiat, the UPP candidate, would have been able to then succeed. It didn't turn out like that. Assad had too much of a hole on the constituency.
Yeah, a matter of fact.
Yeah,
a matter of fact, just walking the ground in St. Peter, what I noticed is that there was that real concerted effort by the Labour Party to basically try to, wash out or smoke out Assad from that constituency. There were paraphernalia all over the place, talking to persons. I heard of money being spent left, right, and center on both sides. But interestingly, a young lady, very, very young. A matter of fact, I don't think she was of voting age as yet. And when I spoke to her, she said, if somebody doesn't support Assad in St. Peter, then they are really and truly ungrateful. And that's it really spoke volumes to me then when a young, 15, 16-year-old said that. So basically just confirmed to me that whatever Assad is doing in that constituency, it is really resonating with the people there. Obviously, I also got news that in terms of his deep pocket, then he's really spending as well on some persons. It's alleged. I didn't see it, but how the politics go in a region these days is the deeper pockets that really controls what happens at the end of the political race.
Yeah, permit me to say this, and permit me to say this, that we've seen a growing phenomenon where the voter also in an atmosphere of patronage and treating and bribery, where the voter will then decide how much I'm selling my vote for.
That's a trend.
We'll be able to put a price on his and one of the positive takeaway that I have from this election is how a sense of community, maybe starting with Barbuda, all right, where people have a real sense of the land and the ownership and what it means to them. Where Gaston was offering, because we have a common land ownership in Barbuda, where the land is owned in common by the people. Yeah. And Gaston, in order to derail that, so that Gaston can treat Barbuda as a piece of expensive real estate that he can sell and dole out to his rich friends and so on. He was then, saying, listen, calling the Barbudans tenants and squatters, deracinated imbeciles, and also then saying, listen, I am going to sell, after that, selling to the Barbudans, I am going to sell you the plot that you live on. Each of you will be entitled to an acre of land. And you can have that for $1, right? And I'm saying that this is a case where community and a sense of your nexus to your patrimony, right? I mean, triumphed overwhelmingly over the kind of approach that mean, our Prime Minister has taken to the country generally over the years. I mean, you never hear him talk about community development, nationality, a sense of community. It is always about the dollar, the money. All right. And here it is where a sense of community and a sense of identity and a sense of knowing your patrimony triumph. It is tantamount, guys, to the government of Dominica saying to the people in the Carib territory that we are going to sell you. We're going to tear up that historic communal ownership of your land. We're going to tear that up and we're going to give each of you, we're going to give you a plot. How many acres there in Dominica, in the Carib territory? Over 2,000 acres. We're going to give each of you maybe maybe half an acre. We're going to reserve the other 1,000 acre to give to our friends and so on. Yeah. And we're going to cut that up, sell that, and make big money off of it. But each of you should feel good that you are now the owners
by
of
getting something in terms of right. I understood that. Yeah. Just to be correct, Brother Spencer, it's no longer called the Carib territory. Yeah.
Sorry. I should know that. My profuse apologies to you.
No problem.
And all my friends in the Kalinago territory. My profuse apologies.
We understand that, but it's my duty to just set things right.
I teach Caribbean history, so I also.
Okay. Just before, Brother Alvin, let's take a point from you before I get back to the live feed. It's already 24 minutes to 8.
I'm glad Brother Spencer raised the point he just raised. Because from what I understand him to be saying is that Gaston Brown, the Prime Minister, went there with a largesse, with a bag of money. And notwithstanding the bag of money, the people stood firm.
Yep.
So again, that's why I want to make the point. I am in no way underestimating the influence of money, because we all know who pays the piper calls the tune. But we still do have in our region where no matter what monies that these politicians will come with, the people sometimes will stand, as was the case in Barbuda. And that in itself needs to be recognized and observed. So it is not all lost. Sometimes we paint a wide brush and say, oh, you know what, this guy money is going to come there like Santa Claus and he's going to buy over the place. And we're saying, no, it does not always happen. So I'm happy he raised that point.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks, Alvin. There must be some kind of method to the message. So yes, point noted as well. Let's get back to the feed here in the interest of time. John Joseph is writing here. He probably thought that Assot will take over. Not Lofty. Pat Corbett, saying Lofty, you are right on. The education has to start from much earlier. Everlasting Peter is writing a comment here, says, hi, nice to be with the viewers and listeners from the region and the diaspora. John Blanchard is coming here for another comment. It says, it's obvious that this Assad guy is well loved in his constituency. He actually got more votes than the ABLP, who got 710 votes, and UPP 469 votes, which equal to 1,179 compared to Assad 1,657. Well, John is an accountant by profession. So John, thanks for crunching those numbers for us. Yes, but the point is made there by you, putting the votes together of his opponents. He basically Assad, sort of trampled over them politically speaking. All right. Thanks for that. Let's take another comment. Ezra Samuel is writing here. Can you imagine that mostly all of these are the same, all this money. All right. Thank you very much for this. John Joseph come back and says, there are many young people who are willing to, but we only want to reach out to them by these radio programs and not put things in place to meet with them one-on-one. So yes, John, thank you for that comment as well. As I said, there must be a method to the messaging as it pertains to, getting the message across to young people. A billboard that I saw in Antigua, and I know Brother Spencer would be acquainted with that billboard. I took note of it, Brother Spencer. It says, it wasn't a billboard on some education project or whatever, but what it said was, the inscription was, in order to teach them, you must reach them.
Yep. I know where that billboard is, Johan. I know what that billboard is at the beginning as you come out of the Sousa Road and you head in to go south. Right there by Golden Grove School, because it's something that I notice and I often quote as well.
Yes, I took note of that billboard. I took note of it. I took a peek of it because it really resonated with me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, very interesting information from your guest. That is Veronica Pascal writing that there. Claren and Warrington writes, elections nowadays is only money and not the good work on the ground. Oh boy, Lord, help us. Brother Spencer, in the few minutes that we have left, I want to now kind of shift the conversation to sort of looking forward.
Yeah.
9-8 in that parliament of you guys, how do you see that equation playing out?
Okay, well, first of all, it must be noted that the
9-6 and plus
Mr. Yearwood, Robin Yearwood has not been given a ministerial portfolio.
Yes,
right?
I recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, it is said on the ground that maybe he's having signs of dementia or something like that. Okay, so we empathize with him, right? There was clearly the Prime Minister has indicated that this is the last go round, would be the last go round for him, for Mr. Yearwood, and certainly Mr. Malwin Joseph. The question, of course, as to whether they will last the course is another one. And so the UPP are saying they need to keep their powder dry. The candidates need to keep their powder dry because there's likely to be by-elections in the offing in the near future. All right. The Prime Minister now, is going to have, rather than what he said was the single Pringle in the House of Representatives in Mr. Jamal Pringle, who was the lone MP for the UPP. He will now have 5 additional UPP MPs to deal with. Amongst them, one of the ones he really didn't want to get in, most feared, in Algernon Serpent Watts. All right, so there's going to be that challenge, right? Now I
know this brother.
Yeah, you know the brother, right? I
know this brother.
You're right. So, gentlemen, I am always of the view that that in a country where you have one party has so much overwhelming power, especially election after election, they're incapable of governing well. They're unable to restrain themselves. So having a strong opposition is one of the countervailing forces to the tendency to exercise absolute power. And in our country, coming from the background that we have come from, there is that authoritarian, dictatorial, tribal instinct that drives us, rather than that instinct towards a more understanding that we have to rule in a way that consult people, that is, consensual, that works along with people. All right. So in this scenario, it is better when you have a government with not too large a majority in the House.
Yeah.
All right. So that is what Gaston Bone is faced with. It now, today on another program, I hear calls as speakers saying, listen, you need to, because we've been calling for parity as well, for reform and parity in the boundaries, election boundaries. My own position has been to say parity, but we also need to look as well as either maintaining and not increasing the number of seats, which would add an additional burden of governance right to our system. In fact, my position really is in terms of the move towards something like what you have in Dominica, a system of local government, community,
yes,
setup. Except that I worry because what I heard advocated by Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt is a deepening of the patronage and the cool-out system. Because I heard him saying that he is going to give the ministers in his country like 400,000, right? I don't know over what interval. And when people in the community have needs, they go to these guys to have those needs addressed. No, that is going to tear up and undermine.
Mr. Spencer, let me tell you, no disrespect to you, sir. You see Roosevelt Skerritt, that is just hot. That's hot air. That's hot air.
But even hot air needs to be just. You need to try a lot of cold water on that to ensure the hot air never rises. You can't allow that hot air to rise.
No. But there was a burning question I was just going to ask you before I move to Alvin. Alvin, go ahead, Alvin, and then I think that will come back.
No, I think the brother David Spencer has put it quite rightly. I mean, the way our democracy is fashioned and supposed to work requires there to be an effective opposition in parliament and to represent the interests of the people. And when that goes away and we have one government dominating the parliament, then clearly that's not a democracy. There are various institutions that are at play, and it just doesn't augur well. So I think the Antiguan people are in a very good space now. And I have no doubt that the 8 persons they have now in the parliament on the opposition side should be able to represent the interests of the Antiguan people and keep Prime Minister Gaston Brong in check. That's what it requires. It requires checks and balances. And where you have a situation where one party dominates, then the checks and balances are thrown out of the window. So I think you guys are in a good space. You guys have to make use of it effectively. And my advice is that, like you've said, is to keep it alive. One of the things that I think, or the mistake that parties make in the region, is that they go into an election, and after the election, everything forgets until the next election. But an election never stops. As a matter of fact, the UPP should now be gearing itself up for the next election. And that's what happens sometimes to oppositions.
True.
And when snap elections are called, they sometimes feel that they're caught with their pants down or whatever the case might be. But you constantly have to be there on the ground, engaging with your people, engaging with the people. So I think you guys are in a good space, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Mr. Stuart Burton is writing here, Dominica does not have boundary, partly as there are many small constituencies where there is about 3,000 voters, and Roseau North is more than 7,500 voters. That is what Mr. Burton is writing here.
That is true. There's very little parity. Yeah.
Yes, true. All right. I think I got back that scenario that I wanted to put to you, Brother Spencer, before we bring the program to a wrap in just a bit.
Yeah.
On the ground, Brother Spencer, on the ground, I heard something from a number of persons in terms of their why. They think that the UPP, missed it by that close margin. And the thing that I heard coming from different persons were that, one primary thing was, and you'll tell me if basically you as a man, part and parcel of the thing, you agree or not. It was the UPP had it going for them politically right through since the nomination and whatever it is. But sometimes what they said were sometimes your strength can work as your weakness. In that, the scenario they share with me is that here it is, UPP had all that steam, political steam going into the general election. And I think the Sunday, well, there was a Sunday that they called a big rally or had some motorcade or whatever it is. Now, at that rally, they really showed their strength there. And that rally, the people said, shook Gaston off his boots. And so that gave Gaston, who in their estimation was sort of sitting sort of pretty, and said, okay, I have it. Even if by not, but I have it. That was Gaston's mindset. But at that UPP's rally, a Sunday it was, shook Gaston off his boots so much that Gaston now went into is there a double gear? A double gear, as it were, and basically just threw the kitchen sink at the electorate and said, you know something? I am not going to let what I saw there on that Sunday triumph over me. So here it is. I am dashing everything at you guys. How would you respond to that scenario?
All right. I mean, Brother Loftus, it seems as though you must have studied Clausewitz, also one of those proponents of military strategy, in that you don't show your true strength to your enemy.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at the same time, I would like to think that the UPP also needed to show up its strength amongst its supporters, because we operate on the premise that nothing succeeds like success, and so the UPP also needed to get its supporters out there and kind of. So it was deemed to be a megacade, perhaps the largest megacade in this country.
Yes.
I mean, all right, and the ALP, interestingly, had one last Sunday, but it just didn't seem to get off the ground. It didn't seem to get organized. It seems so, all right, in comparison. But you're right. Mr. Brown, the ALP gave up on having rallies because the rallies were very puny. All right, so they then decided we're not doing rallies. What we're doing, and I talked to some of my friends about that strategy because I'd seen it at work. I think in the 1980s, late 80s, when clearly it was felt that they had the ALP on the back foot. And whilst the UPP were rallying in St. John's, big rallies in St. John's, the ALP candidates were in the constituencies giving out, cool out.
Okay.
All right. And I figured that would have been, they would use the same playbook, except that playbook was now not being done at night, in broad daylight. The guys had become so emboldened, right? A colleague of mine told me that his wife, who operates a business, she was given an envelope with $1,000, and each worker in her establishment was offered an envelope with $350. But this must have been at the lower end of the scale. I mean, that candidate I told her of St. Luke's, St. Luke's, Mr. Colin James, was captured making a comment to somebody that the person was demanding $800 for the motorcade. And he was telling the person, listen, be satisfied with this. True. Because I have $1 million coming on Monday. Yes. So that was $1 million, right? So if he had $1 million coming, right? And Gaston Brown lambasted him at the last election, 2018, that Guy James, didn't take by 10 votes. And what Gaston seemed to have suggested or intimated, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. All right. And what he said on the ground is that the guy was given money to buy the votes, but he kept most of it in his own pocket.
I heard Yeah, I also heard another story whereby a child, a toddler at that, said to his mother or somebody after coming from a campaign with his granny or whoever that child was with. The child said to somebody, whoever, I saw the prime minister give my granny real money, and that came from a toddler, 5-6-year-old. Now the child said real money because that child is privy to that game called Monopoly.
Oh.
And so the child was recording out of the mouth of a babe, was recording that he or she saw the prime minister giving his granny real money. And that to me was quite astounding.
Yeah. But gentlemen, we laugh at it, but it's really, really sad. It's really sad that because as a people whose ancestors were sold, and when Gaston, you add that to what Gaston said earlier about the Chinese, if the Chinese want to colonize Antigua, bring the gifts and come.
Wow.
Right? Bring the gifts and come. And gentlemen, I mean, as I said, as people whose ancestors were bought and sold, right? And sold, I mean, in many cases, most cases, sold by our own ancestors in Africa, to have that shown again at us by our leader here in Antigua and Barbuda. I hope that, I mean, Mr. Roosevelt's Skerrit is not ever bold enough to say something like this.
Well, we'll have to invite you. We'll have to invite you back to have another program on the things that we are privy to in Dominica, where governance is
David,
concerned.
there's a saying, action speaks louder than words. So he may not say it, but his actions may say it.
True.
Yes,
but Brother Spencer, before we wind up here, it would be remiss of Alvin and I if we didn't go down that road with you in terms of we said that UPP, they did well at the polls. But they doing well at the polls, it required a kind of a work.
Yeah.
What would you say about the work now that UPP did to got them that kind of political mileage, which was sure will speak volume for us in Dominica? Final thoughts.
All right. Well, two things. One, I mean, the ALP had not delivered Gaston Brown administration. I mean, when you look at the situation, I mean, I don't even want to say objectively because I don't pretend to be objective about it. But there was, I mean, they really and truly, I mean, all aspects of our country have taken a back, and the ministers had engaged themselves in self-enrichment scheme. So that by itself, and their display, their flagrant display of their ill-gotten gains, right? I mean, certainly must have stirred up something in people. And the comparison by that, the absence of services and so on, and roads and utilities and water and so on. So that was one aspect. But that by itself, I mean, outside of the work, the campaign, the work, the leadership, I think, put in by Mr. Howard Lovell, the rally, the work at the constituency level. Certainly, I think that, I mean, from my perspective, I don't know what happened in some constituencies, but you spoke about it, but there still is a need to build on the part of the UPP, to build those organs at the constituency level that will function in and out of electoral season. All right. Sure. And that would then guarantee them that kind of, like as been said by, I know heard Mr. Thomas speaking about the need for focusing on youth and youth engagement and youth programs and so on. So yeah, we've got to look at building on what has been done. The interest is there, the enthusiasm. I mean, UPP was able to capture that. There's widespread commendation. All right. And I think that what happens now is that people will now see that it is possible to change the government. And I believe what C.L.R. James said in his book called Modern Politics, that wherever people have seen the opportunity to take the road of democracy, they have done so.
Yeah.
And so I believe that once people see the possibility of change, and they know now they've seen a previous UPP government. Now they've seen Gaston Brown for 10 years. I think the next round I anticipate that there will be a knockout punch that will be given to the Antigua Barbuda Labour Party.
Yeah, finally, before I move across to Alvin, I had the opportunity to see you guys voters ID card.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that card to you guys process over there in Antigua and Barbuda?
The voters ID card is good, important, but I think that we should now be looking at going beyond that. And I know in Dominica, you guys have been demanding the kind of electoral reforms that Antigua would have had around 2003 going into the 2004 general elections, such as having a voter's ID card. Now we are saying that I think we need to go beyond that towards having a national ID card. You can have a national, I think Barbados maybe has something like that. A national ID card, that card would, so rather than having a card for Social Security, a card for medical benefit, a voter's ID card, maybe that card can be one card, your voter's ID card, all right, that would then contain the necessary information that would incorporate all of those. Okay. So once you put that into a computer, you just, view all the information, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
All right. I'll sure bring you back here. Yeah, we'll sure bring you back here for another conversation as we continue. But Alvin,
yeah,
as we wrap up here, brother.
Yeah, well, again, let me just thank our brother here, David Spencer, for sharing with us his perspective on the recently held Antigua general election. I think there are lessons there to be learned. I don't think there's a huge disparity in terms of the way in which the various, I would say, Labour parties operate in the region. I am optimistic, however, given what has transpired in Antigua and again in Grenada, that there is hope. It's a tall war to fight, but at the end of the day, we can throw in the towel. I think we're in a different era, a different environment. It's not the same when maybe Spencer and I grew up. Lofty's a little younger than us, so I won't want to include it in that group. But when we grew up, it was a different kettle.
I mean, I just there,
I know. I'm still way off, But certainly our approach and strategy has to change. And I'm convinced that with the correct strategy, with the right engagement, we can overcome some of the hurdles. I think people are going to get tired. I don't know if you heard recently the Prime Minister of New Zealand. I mean, after what term or what, she stepped down. And
a young woman at that. Yeah.
A young woman, but she feel, look, I have given my all and what I can give and stepped down. We had it previously in Britain and somebody else took over. So I'm still hopeful that there is hope in the region, but it's not going to come on a platter. We have to fight for it. Yeah. We have to be prepared to fight for it. And those of us who are there, like Lofty and the rest of the folks on the front line in Dominica, I want to commend you guys and say thank you for the work. And those of us in the diaspora who continue to support the cause and the action, to continue doing that. So again, you guys have a great week and all the best, bro.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Brother Spencer, your final thoughts. I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah, well, I'm glad for this opportunity to be on your program. Lofty, we share a kind of common interest in good governance. All right. And it's something that we have to continue to fight for. I grew up on the saying that each generation must find its mission and fulfill or betray it. I think might have been something from Frantz Fanon or something like that.
Yes.
So we have to, and whatever your generation is, we still have to fight because it's one struggle, and our commitment to our region must be unswerving. Our commitment to good governance must be unswerving, and we need to build that solidarity across the region and across the diaspora, so we can preserve our Caribbean civilization and improve it. I want to thank you guys for having me, and on behalf of the movement for good governance in Antigua and Barbuda, I hope I represented them well. Thank you, guys.
Tell Dr. Cleon Attil a special good evening to her as well. On her behalf. and the Movementers team.
Thank you.
All right, Brother David Spencer, thank you very much again. Thank you very much indeed. Do have a good night, bro.
You too. Thanks.
All right, Alvin, as we wrap up here, any final thoughts from your brother?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground. I mean, our work is cut off for us. I mean, we're into a new year, and I know there is a lot ahead of us in terms of what Civic Vibes want to achieve. As Brother Spencer rightly put it, is good governance. I think we all want what is best for our region. I think at the end of the day, that's our objective, to see a good region, a region where young people prosper, where there's jobs, where young people can do the things that they want to do. And the sad part about it is that these islands are so rich. We have sea, we have sun, we have soil, we have water, you name it. And it's a little unfortunate when our young people have to migrate to other places, whereas they could stay and develop whatever skills and talents they have in their own country. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the year in terms of whatever little contributions that I can make, and the many others as well. In saying so, I just want to say a little hello to Paula Celestine. I know she's been one of the persons on the program with us, but she's been away for the last couple of weeks, but I know she is back there working in the vineyard. So good evening, Paula, and I hope you are doing well. And just to say a pleasant week to all our folks who have logged in with us for this program.
Yes, indeed. All right, folks, the program was so packed, we did not even have time to take a musical break. So let us do that for like 2-3 minutes, and then we're going to bring it to a wrap in just a bit. All right. Soul Puss did this one some time back, talking about living on the siege.
Champion farmer, hardworking, independent, was making money. But today in my land, I feel more like a failure. The siege and stripped of my ability to feed the family. Political victimization in a country can in less no time reduce you to poverty, when a minority controlling all the money and no justice in the land. Any man should take a stance. It's about that olive branch you send.
All right, Dominica, that is it for us for another yet another very interesting program on the Civic Vibes Facebook page for the 22nd day, or well, evening already, of January 2023, huh? It's always a pleasure each and every Sunday in your company. So on behalf of the Civics team, Alvin and I, we want to bid you a very, very good evening indeed.
This is no way for a man to live.
Special thanks to Dr. Spencer, Brother David Spencer, who were here with us for some time, at least the better part of the 2 hour.
Forgive while I'm still.
As we look back, a lesson learned from the Antigua and Barbuda general elections. And the state of democracy in our region. Thank you very much for your eyes and ears. Till we meet next week Sunday, same time, same place.
I sing. In my days, I used to drive Land Rover. But today, I take a bus to go everywhere. To you, I'm just another troublemaker. Go interview any nurse or a teacher, and then go talk to a trucker, a builder, or a contractor. Then talk to any bus driver. And if you're still not sure, you really need to see a doctor. It's about that olive branch you send, not about opposition to government. To come down from a business owner to a beggar, waiting on a monthly check from government welfare. This is no way for a man to live. Can't buy a stove, cannot afford a fridge, and I'm expected to forgive while I'm still living on the sea. And blood can hardly keep your faith, but I am intending to keep mine. While the masses are growing poorer and poorer, you want to have everybody living in fear, harassing and arresting the youth of this land, police abuse of power and position. Now you blaming everything on Lennox Linton, but the longest road have a bend, and the longest road must have an end. I say it's about that olive branch you send, not about opposition to government.